So, um, our Getting to Know You service, opportunity to learn a bit more about our members. Fran, Soa, Garrick Smothers, and Greg Lawler. We're all in a row there, so can't miss it. All right, I'm going to give you each a short period of time to tell us how you first became a Unitarian Universalist, or even just come and visit us. How did you get in the door? Want to start, Fran? Sure.
A number of years ago, I attended a world religions class, and it just happened that Leonetta Bukwesi, who was then the minister here, appeared as a speaker and explained what Unitarian Universalism was all about. Now, at the time, my son Chris was in high school, and he was not happy attending Catholic Mass with me. So I thought, well, maybe he'll be interested in Unitarian Universalism. And we attended a service here, and Chris was interested. He was young, so it wasn't permanent, but he became a member for a few years until he went off to college. Now, in my case, it took longer to pull up my Catholic roots, but I came to appreciate a church which didn't tell me what to believe, but gave me space to consider just what my deepest beliefs were in my heart. So I signed the book eventually, and I'm still here.
So I was a few years ago. I've been in the neighborhood about 10 years, and I would frequent the Starbucks across the street, and I just kept being curious about what's going on in that building, and then I would see these signs about um, meditation, all that, and I sort of identified with that, and I just stumbled in one day, and Marina, the first person that greeted me, and I just loved the intimacy of the congregation, and I got to know a little bit more about, I guess, the overall concepts of Unitarian beliefs and ideas. I love the fact that it was very open to different ideas. We've had an atheist speak here before, and I just like that openness, and so I probably quickly came remember. I can't remember how long ago this was, but it was almost immediate. I was like, "Oh, I love this place," and so I've been coming here ever since, except for the days that I've missed. One I felt really, really guilty about because I was supposed to play piano. But anyhow, I really just love this congregation and feeling, and I look forward to it every single
time. I first joined with Marcia. Most don't know, my wife, we were getting married in Durham, North Carolina. We were first looking for a minister in 1990. And we heard about the Unitarians. We started going to the church, and they called a fellowship there. And felt comfortable there. I do remember a couple of things, one of which is not quite sure what if there are any overriding things they were believing. And I remember reading the principles, and I said, okay, that's okay. As you'll see, probably the next question, I have a much more wider view of things. Just a slightly, it's a minor correction, but I still don't think I've ever become a Unitarian Universalist. what I've been is a member of Unitarian Universalist congregations. And I find there's a difference there.
In our denomination, we find atheists, agnostics, Christians, Buddhists, sacred humanists, pagans, and more. There's a variety of in our world. Can you tell us today where you are religiously speaking?
I believe that a sacred spirit animates every living being, and I try to respect and honor that spirit in whatever I do. Some might call that a form of panentheism.
Yeah. So, you just repeat that.
Okay. Can you tell us where you are religiously today?
So, religiously, I wake up in the morning and meditate, but I approach each day from a spirit of love. And that's, and that's how I walk out the door with that mindset. That's how I guess that would be my sort of loving approach to life.
That's a hard question. I'm just going to say, if people want to hear more about my religious beliefs or things like that, there is a YouTube video under the Beverly site speaking about liberal religion. But I'll just say that I believe that all sort of models of God are just sort of models of things. I don't have any real belief in any of them, but I find the models very useful, and particularly the religious observances that come from them. So my background is very conservative Catholic, but I spent a lot of time learning about Judaism. I've learned about various other aspects, and for me, music has been part of learning about the aspects of the religion. But my view of religion is much more the understanding how people over the ages have practiced of religion than the actual specific dogmas that they have believed in. I do find that dogmas have beautiful images, and I don't like to throw those out, but I throw out something I don't like in religion.
Fran, I've got 2 questions. First, please tell us how your work as an attorney reflected your UU beliefs.
Well, as an attorney, I was an assistant public defender, and this meant that I was assigned to various courtrooms. Now, when I represented parents at juvenile court, they were alleged to have abused or neglected their children. These were civil proceedings, and the issue was the custody of the children, whether they should be removed in their own best interest from the custody of the parents. I was assigned to the appellate division. I represented persons who were appealing their criminal convictions. In all cases, no matter what an individual was alleged to have done, my role was to present whatever legal arguments supported the client's position. These were human beings, inherently worthy of my best efforts on their behalf. I remember one appellate case in particular. My client was serving a long sentence for armed robbery. He admitted to me that he had forcibly taken money from somebody, but he insisted that he was not armed at the time, and that was the serious part of the charge. The arresting officer, who had injured my client severely by shooting him, had testified that my client used a particular weapon during the incident and had in fact fired at the police officer. At first, it seemed like there was not much I could argue on behalf of my client, since the trial judge, had found the officer to be very credible. But I asked around my colleagues, and I finally got to talk to somebody who knew a great deal about guns. And it turned out that the weapon, which had been identified as the one used by my client, could not have been discharged in the manner that the officer testified to. So after a hearing on this new evidence, my client's lengthy sentence for armed robbery was vacated.
Now, second. Sorry. How did you become such a passionate environmentalist?
Well, I had several traumatic, I would say, experiences which remain with me today. In the 1950s, I commuted downtown on the South Shore Line from the southeast side of Chicago. And of course, the train was not air conditioned. The windows were wide open in the summer. And the South Shore Line had to stand on a side rail for a while to get clearing to use the icy tracks to go downtown. At any rate, so we're standing there, and from my window, I witnessed tons of raw garbage that had been trucked to the southeast side from all over the city, being packed into our wetlands as so-called landfill. Unfortunately, it took years, decades, I would say, of activism by the affected residents before the city council ended that practice within Chicago city limits.
All right, you're in the hot seat now, Garrick. Last month, you told us who you were as a boy. We know that you are a self-taught musician. Please tell us a little bit about you as an artist.
As an artist, I'm also self-taught. I did have some formal training in college, but I've always had a passion for drawing since I was a child. In fact, I would use this skill in a really horrible way as an older brother to kind of tease him. And he was I really enjoyed being an only child. I think I may have mentioned. And he was a very sick child. Like he had pneumonia probably about 8 times, so he was always in the hospital. So it kind of stole my sunshine. But I love you. But I would make these pictures, like I would take all these pieces of paper and I would tease him about having a big head, and he didn't have a big head. But I just would make this a thing. this really tiny body. Huge profile that would lay on the table. He was just bursting into tears. And I feel bad about it now, but it was just kid stuff. I was probably 8 or 9 years old. But as far as my formal technical skills and my studio practice as an artist developed when I was in college. That's when I really started to paint. But I did it like secretly. So pieces home. And I just got encouraged by, after I got out of college, I was encouraged by some coworkers. I was doing interior design. I started taking photographs of my pieces. This is before I cell phone. And they were just so encouraging. They were just like, you don't need to be looking. It's hard. And so my very first show was in my parents' home. I just sort of never looked back from there, and I had some lucky breaks with dealers handling my pieces ever since. So, thank you. And I have a couple of examples.
But could you just briefly tell us about the pieces that you brought this morning?
Sure. So these two pieces, one's on the mantle stand, and these are like the two most recent pieces I've done. I have several styles that I work in. As a matter of fact, Allison over here, prior of Maine, which is right down the street, to see more of my work. It's just a few blocks away on her. Briefly, that is a whiskey bottle I shared with a friend, and he was like, "Do you want to create something on this?" It took me a while to it just sat on my table for. I eventually came up with this. I use a lot of sort of imagery, like theme and variation, of basically like a mask image, stick figures, and these X's. It's very all it is like theme and variation. And that's kind of like a large body of my work. I did florals when my child was born, and cityscapes, and different subject matters. But it just tends to be like theme and variation. So I'll create a body of work in that.
Right. Now, Greg. We know Greg best as our music director, but we also know that Greg is a professor at the University of Chicago. These are personal questions. Did you grow up in a musical family? And did music lead you to math, or did math lead you to music?
Well, I asked him, did I grow up in a musical family or did I grow up in a mathematical scientific family? And the answer is no. My family was neither musical nor mathematical scientific. My father had studied to become a priest, gave up without what the equivalent of junior college, and they got to work. My mother went to college and worked as a journalist. They met in Western Maryland, Cumberland, Maryland. My father, while he only had 2 years of college, actually knew Latin very well. Actually, although he worked for the government to make a living, as a hobby, he actually translated Latin and then became editor for series and scholarly things. So there was a background of learning in my household, if not. But music was not a big thing, and certainly math was not. It turns out I was good in math, um, and I was able to go to school in math, and then I found out I could go to graduate school for free, because you can get PhDs if you're good enough in math. And then I ended up in a career in mathematics, which I really didn't foresee at all. But as a professor, but I've also had a chance to travel all around the world, probably have been to 30 countries because of my traveling in mathematics. Music is a much later thing. I do not grow up doing music. I don't have music lessons. Uh, there was a guitar in the house that I sort of later in life started playing with, and it became something I did on my own. Later on, I started playing more music, trying to sing more. Everything like that is late in life. Uh, People would laugh if they heard that I was theoretically the music director at a church. I mean, and I really don't have the skills to do that, but I am a encourager of one to uh, develop what skills one has and keep the musical skills. Because I also got interested in folk dance and folk cultures, I do got interest in people making music for themselves, not having music made for them. So I am a believer in doing that. When I talk about religion, I do find the music in religion very important, trying to understand how people express themselves in the context of the religious tradition they come from. And also, so I spent time in Eastern European music, understanding how the musicians uh, would actually be able to cross boundaries that the others weren't, like in Eastern Europe. There was the Catholic, there was the Orthodox, there was the Jewish, there was the Muslim, there was the Gypsy / Rom, and musicians could cross those boundaries. Even in the U.S., I grew up in Northern Virginia, but affiliation to the South, and while in the world of a segregated South, the musicians were among the people who could actually cross those racial boundaries. So actually, I was very much been into music for those reasons, and I've been appreciative of this church because it's small and because it survives on its own members, has given me an opportunity to do kinds of music that I've never done. Now, so that's later in life, but I would say that even though the math do not lead to music, the way I think of music and my approach, my understanding of music is definitely influenced by my mathematical background.
I have one last question for each of you. If you had a bucket list, what one thing would be on it?
I would hope to see more of the natural places on Earth, especially those that may be disappearing and not with us much longer. And I would hope to witness the good work being done to protect or restore those places.
Let's see here. I collect a lot of things, and I think one thing I would want is to get, I'm not going to say like, to get like a really expensive sports car. I've always loved cars, even though I have a bunch of bikes and no car. So that's one thing. And the other thing, there's something that's not travel. There's one other thing that, and I can't think of what it is. I don't want to sound so shallow that it's just a car that I want. It was something deeper than that. But I can't, it escapes you right now. But
Stage fright. It's okay. You can have it.
yeah,
In your dreams.
I just don't need one, but I just want one, and I want a specific one, and I'm gonna get it.
I don't have any specific things. As I'm moving closer, I might not be retired yet, but I will somewhere in the next couple of years. Professionally, I want to have a chance to look back at the profession and get out of the rat race of doing research and actually look at whether or not the way research is done is the right way of doing things. Musically, what I'm missing here, and I'd like to get back to, obviously, in a bucket list. In other places, I've had a chance to play with bands. And playing with bands is nice because you get to perform for a long time, but you don't have to be the star the entire time. Part of the time you can be in the back enjoying somebody else. And there's something about music, bands, choirs, where people are, it's a microcosm of society because everyone's bringing their own little piece to it, different pieces. And you get the advantage of taking advantage of everyone else's pieces. That's, maybe I have a chance to do that.
I remember what it is. You reminded me, because I am a musician. I would love, absolutely love to, just at least once, get paid to play music. And the idea of being in like a jazz band or something like that would be so. If I had to choose an alternate career path, it would be a full-time musician.
I'm just going to pick up on that. I'm not sure there's a restaurant in Ithaca called the Moosewood Restaurant, known for vegetarian. And I once got a chance to play there, and I got a chance to play for money. I made $7 and one free dinner. So I am a professional musician.
Well, we are beneficiaries of all of your experiences, your sharing, and I want to thank you each so deeply for what you did with us this morning. Thank you.